In 1959, at Street's Grocery in Whitefish, Montana's special spice was born. Alpine Touch. It's the taste you grew up with, well seasoned through the test of time. As the tradition carries from one Montana generation to the next. From its humble beginnings to a trusted brand, here's to the next 60 years. Alpine Touch. Montana's special spice since 1959.
You know, I think how we played in the non-conference, pleased with how we progressed. Saturday's performance in particular, I think we needed a fast start. I think we felt like we matched up well, but maybe not as well as the score indicated, and it was a lot to do with our fast start. So appreciate our guys' continued improvement in their effort, and look forward to beginning conference play this week at Portland State. So open it up.
Anything the film kind of revealed that was interesting?
Well, I know I was asked that evening. We had a couple, offensive series in the second quarter that didn't ultimately end up in points, and I made mention that they're trying to. I think San Diego's got a good team, and they made some plays through that stretch. Certainly some learning opportunities for us on offense. I liked how we responded in the second half with that, obviously the big run initially by Isaiah. I think defensively, our effort, our attention to detail continues to be the primary focus, and we're living up to that for the most part. It was great to get as many guys in the game as we did, and those second string guys that got that time are going to be counted on more and more, I think, in particular situations as the season goes on. So it was great to get them in the game.
How does preparation differ for conference play, if at all?
Well, I don't. Your preparation for each opponent is probably more dictated by the opponent. The weeks are all the same, with the exception of when we have a bye week. I think as you move along, you have more games to study. They have more games of us as well. I know the conference games and ultimately winning a conference championship is what we're trying to attain. So these conference games, as they stack up, I suppose in a sense mean more every week. But as far as our preparation, I think we go in it the same. I know we haven't played any of these teams since 19, and a team like Portland State we haven't played since 18. So going back in history typically is something you can do. It's a little less applicable this year with new staff not playing in 2020. So no, it's our next opponent. I think we'll prepare like we have each one of these games leading up.
A lot of these teams you have film from last year on. Obviously, this is one of the teams like yourself that you don't have on. What kind of challenges does that present, not having anything since 2019?
It's just a volume. It's a volume deal. I think they played Montana, so we do have that game from the spring along with their three. So I think personnel, the changes and all that. I think you take all that a little different from a normal one season to the next. I think it probably helps us in this short term. We still have just 3 games out there, and there's really nothing to go on besides that. But I think now you get into the season, you have 3 games, and ultimately those games will keep adding on. And you're dealing with a pretty good wealth of knowledge, I think.
We saw a variety of different plays we hadn't seen in the first 2 games. Would you characterize that as general install, or is that a priority for you before conference plays to get to some of those deeper corners of the playbook?
Well, I think it's trying to utilize our personnel. It's certainly game plan oriented relative to what San Diego gave us versus what Drake did versus Wyoming. I think we have the ability to do a lot of different things on both sides of the football. Offensively, to use a lot of different personnel groupings, to use different sets. Defensively, to have different looks from a blitz perspective, to be able to cover in different ways, and I think it just showed our versatility as much as anything, and then obviously being relative to just what it's going to take to beat San Diego.
What are your thoughts on Portland State offense and defense?
Offensively, I think they have a very dangerous quarterback first and foremost, and they got a good complement of receivers. I think, he's the quarterback, and that's who we have to really focus on. He's able to extend plays, and he's really what drives them. I think they got a good scheme. They're sound. They're well coached. So I think on offense, they've put up some numbers. Certainly against two FBS teams, and the win they had this past Saturday against Western Oregon, they put up some numbers. I think defensively they have a challenging scheme. They play a flex defense, which is what goes way back to Arizona Desert Swarm, way before your time for sure. I know covering this sport. It's interesting. Coach Sadat, their coordinator, was at Cal Poly back in the mid-2000s when we played them at North Dakota State, so a little familiarity with that defense because Coach Ellerson, head coach at Cal Poly, was the defense coordinator in Arizona when Desert Swarm became a thing. So it's a defense that not too many people run, that does give, I think, people problems, and reading back why Coach Barham ultimately hired him as a defensive coordinator. It was some of the issues he had when he was coordinating at Idaho State and faced him at Cal Poly. So that's a lot of history there. But it's a defense that schematically poses challenges. They come at you from different angles. They throw different coverage looks at you. And we just have to be. We got to be on the same page. Our guys need to know what they're doing, and they got to be able to do it as fast as they can.
They have a D tackle, VK Mullo, I believe. He has 5.5 sacks already and 7 tackles for loss. What is he impressive on film as those stats are?
Yeah, I think a very active guy. Again, this scheme frees guys up, and he's been a guy that has had some of those opportunities. But when he's been given opportunities to make plays, he has. Moves well, strong, all those things that you want in a D lineman. So he's definitely a guy that we have to account for.
Who do you think will be kind of the primary offensive lineman to block them?
Well, it could be any and all of them. The way he kind of moves around. I mean, they'll play him. He'll make plays in the interior. He'll get on the outside just with the way they move a little bit. So all our guys are probably going to have to account for him at any given time.
Can you speak a little bit more about the flex defense and kind of maybe what characterizes and is so specific about it?
Well, the flex aspect comes from playing a stand-up linebacker essentially over a guard or over both guards. And, kind of playing at the heels of the defensive lineman and then setting the other linebackers deeper. It's just you kind of get in this world where we've played 3 4-down teams in a row on top of seeing our own defense, which is a 4-down team. So we've been accustomed to seeing generally one front going all the way back to the spring. We've worked some odd front times during spring ball and then in fall camp, but this will be the first oddity that we've seen, and it's not something a lot of people run. And if you got the right players, in particular those linebackers that are flexed off the line, they can be hard to handle just because their alignment, they're playing a little bit further back. So I guess the challenge is, do you treat them as a down lineman even though they're standing up, but their proximity to the line of scrimmage, or you treat them like a linebacker where now they're much closer than a typical linebacker. So maybe that's a little quick sneak peek at it, I guess. So.
MSU had, I think, 300 plus rushing yards last time they were at Portland State in 2019, and Troy had 200 plus. Do you think that kind of success? Would you think that? Are you confident in having that kind of success on the ground against Portland State again? Or
we gotta execute, and I think offensively there's certainly characteristics that are similar to 19 to 18. I know that, but there's also pretty significant differences too. And I think personnel-wise for them, that was pretty early on as they made that change. So their comfortability in this scheme, I think, is different as well. So, then how do they choose to play us coverage-wise? I hope as we moved along, we've proven that we can throw it and we can run it. So teams have to honor both sides of it, and we certainly want to get the running game going, and I at the same time have that mindset that we got to take what they're going to give us too. And I think we've been able to do that by and large these first 3 games, in particular, probably the last 2, where they've tried to do some things to take the run game away. We've been able to throw it, so it'll be interesting just how game day plays out, and hopefully our ability to do either, whether that means run it or throw it, whichever needs to come into play can.
Blackfoot Communications is committed to supporting Bozeman businesses. From intelligent network solutions like SD-WAN to fast and reliable fiber-based services, Blackfoot delivers innovative ways for your business to succeed. Blackfoot Communications. Connect to more.
Could you give us an update on who's traveling or returning to the field this week with injuries and stuff?
Yeah, we anticipate getting Tyrell Thomas back this week, and that'll be a big addition. We've missed Tyrell these first 3 games. We've had some guys step up in his absence, but to get his ability, his experience back will be big. Nolan Askelson went down, so I suspect we're going to be without him for a while. Offensively, it's our hope that we get Cole Sane back. Cole got hurt at the tail end of the Wyoming game. He's missed the last 2 weeks. He was out there today, so that's probably where we're at as far as returning guys. R.J. Fitzgerald is certainly on the mend right now. Nate Stewart's maybe getting closer. Down probably 1 in Nolan, but we gained a couple back in Cole and Tyrell.
You had to shift that defense a little bit to fill that void for Tyrell. Are you going to kind of shift it back to what you were hoping would be week 1, or are you going to kind of put Tyrell in a different spot just because your defense does seem to be pretty solid these first 2 weeks?
I think game 1 for Tyrell to try to narrow his focus, I guess. I think down the road, I think we'd like to use it in a few different spots, but I would suggest, we'll probably try to limit what we do with him this week. He's working back into shape. He's healthy, but there's a game shape that he's working back into. So I think you'll see an expanded role as we continue on with Tyrell, but probably not as much this week.
Coach, how would you assess Matthew McKay's performance so far in the first 3 games?
Well, I think it's definitely been solid. I think he's done a couple things. He's completed the ball very well. I think we're at 67% right now, and that's really our expectation that we'd be above 60. So he's being at 67, we're really pleased with that. He hasn't turned the ball over yet in 3 games, and he's been able to make plays on 3rd down. And while there's been plenty of opportunities within each game, I think that he can learn from. I think he's taking those learning experiences and improving. And if our quarterback can make some plays, he can protect the football, and he can make plays on 3rd down in particular, that gives us a very good chance to win. And I think in the running game, he's continued to improve. I thought against San Diego, that was the most effective he was in the running game, both with the way he kind of attacked some of those runs, and then he made some people miss out in the perimeter.
You've spoken a lot about his mental preparation and his approach there. How much do you think that has impacted his play on the field?
Well, it certainly helps, and I think it's twofold now that he's getting experience. To have all that preparation without experience is just part of the equation. So now, I think putting both those together, you're kind of applying all that time spent in the film room to actual game time experience, and that's what ultimately allows someone to move forward. You learn by doing. You certainly learn by watching and spending time that way, but you learn more by doing, and I think that's where we've seen growth in Matt each week.
Looked like Kendrick Bailey was also hurt before the game.
Yes.
What's his status?
That's good you bring that up. Kendrick was coming along and making an impact special teams wise. Anticipate Kendrick will be out for maybe a week or 2 more here, but we will get him back. But Kendrick was doing a good job on special teams for sure, and certainly was a guy providing depth at that free safety spot.
Both lower body for him and Askelson, is that right?
Yes, yep.
We were talking to Jeffrey about an hour ago about the differences between you and Coach Choate, and it seems like you've kind of come in here and seamlessly led the team and have pretty good success here to start the first 3 games. In what ways do you feel like you've kind of allowed that transition to happen between two different head coaches?
Well, I think I said it from day one. Credit goes to where the program was at under Coach Cho. And I think, in his time here at MSU, they made significant strides, so much that they were a semifinal team in 2019. And, I think while we're different individually and personality-wise, I think we see the game similarly. So it wasn't this earth-shattering amounts of change that had to be made. However, we did make, I think significant enough changes on schemes on both sides, and I think allowing for those schematic changes to take place through the spring, and then also getting a sense for, okay, what kind of tweaks, how do we want to put our stamp on this outfit as a staff? Let that kind of take its, take a big long view of that through the spring, and I think we, I think the emphasis was, okay, MSU was good, semifinals, but what can we do to take that next step? And I think our summer was big. We talked a lot about that. I think the scheme changes were, significant enough to, at least early on, I hope see some improvement. And I think the biggest thing relative to transition is I think the guys really believed in what they were doing before, and transitioning so they would believe in what we're doing. And I think 3 games in, there is a real belief in what we're doing, and that's not to say what was done before there was anything wrong with. It's just a change of mindset in some areas, and I really appreciate our guys' willingness to adapt to change and believe in change. And that belief doesn't come by just us saying, "Hey, here's what we're going to do. It's going to work." It's trusting the coaching, but it happening over time, and those guys seeing results too. So that was a long answer to your question, but I think there's a lot that goes into it, and ultimately I think we inherited a real good group of guys who are hungry and willing to, adjust, and so far so good as far as that goes.
Did you talk to Coach Cho at all during the transition?
We talked a couple times, kind of right away. Pretty general in our conversation. It wasn't anything super specific, but he was helpful certainly in those conversations we had, and obviously retaining the guys that I did. Those guys have probably been more the bridge of kind of previous knowledge of why things were done a certain way, how they were done, why our guys, respond to certain things. I mean, those guys are probably the ones that we get the most credit in just helping bridge the gap, I suppose.
Coach, a lot of your players, a lot of your players have praised you on just your paying attention to detail. Where did you learn that, and why do you prioritize really honing in on?
Really coached under 2 guys, Bob Babbage and Craig Bowl, and coached with a lot of guys though. So, and the other guys that have become head coaches, and I think it was important. I look back at the staff we had when I was a pretty young coach. Between Coach Babbage, who's a linebackers coach for the Bills, obviously Coach Bowl, head coach for Wyoming, Gus Bradley, who's a defensive coordinator for the Raiders, Dan Enos, who's been a head coach, but now he's a coordinator at Maryland, has been at a lot of different places, just to name a few. Tim Albin's the head coach at Ohio, but a lot of guys that had learned the right way, I guess, and learning from them. It's to do the things you want to. I think on the coaching side, it's preparing your players the best you can, and it's details. It's leaving no stone unturned. It's that mindset. It's we could have better players and we could just throw them out there and see how it goes. But a really good player who's really prepared, gives you that much more chance to succeed. And if you have a group of those guys, then you really have something. So, it's a mindset that I learned as a pretty young coach, coaching with so many excellent coaches and mentors for me. And credit would go back I've probably 20 years as far as just learning, I think, how to do things the right way and how to prepare.
And players on both sides of the ball have said how they trusted you almost right away. How did you go about earning that trust? Was it some of that attention to detail?
Well, I think it was going into saying, you guys don't have to trust me just because I'm your head coach. We're going to do this, through a process, and it's going to be about communication. I think it's pretty deliberate as far as that goes. I think with our guys, the hires that we made, that I made, those guys initially, with that communication piece, and again, not just assuming trust was going to be gained. I think players trust people that are going to, ultimately make them better, and that's certainly on the field, but it's off the field as well. And there's a care that comes with that I think our staff exhibited right away. Again, whether it was the new guys or the guys that we retained. So I think it was just being deliberate and being, willing to communicate with them and, express, okay, we're making some changes, but here's why. Here's how we think it'll work. Not just making change for change's sake, I guess. So.
What have you thought of Blake Hill's performance since he filled in for Kyle?
I think Blake's been very active. I think that's what, when we signed him, that's what we hoped we were getting, as a guy that would go and have a presence in there, not only with his ability, but just the way he went after it, plays hard, and he's continued to get better and better. I think back to the beginning of fall camp where he was at, to where he's at now. It was apparent that we needed to play him right away, and we certainly wish Kyle wouldn't have went down, but he's worked himself into a situation where I think he's a guy that we can definitely count on to be a pretty steady force in there, and not a guy that inside you're not going to rack up tons of tackles necessarily, but if you're doing your job, the guys behind you look pretty good. And in between Blake and Chase and the whole host of guys that we're playing right now, I think we feel pretty good about our play on the interior.
You talked about some of your coaching tree. I was interested if you have any crossover with Bruce Barnum. He's been kind of a staple for in the Big Sky the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I hadn't met Coach Barnum in person until the Big Sky Media Days. Did recruit his son, who ultimately went on to play baseball at Wazoo. Brody a few years back as a quarterback. Our defensive line coach, Pete Caligas at Wyoming, knew Coach Barnum well, just from recruiting the area. So I knew of him more than I knew him, but has a long track record. An offensive guy that had some success. Obviously, got the role to become a head coach, and has had some good seasons at Portland State. He certainly got the crowd riled up and became a nationwide sensation last week with buying everybody a beer that showed up. So, he's working hard, and I know, whether they have some challenges or not out there, he's all in, and he's a good football coach, and he's got a good staff, and they're well coached, and I think we're well aware of what's in front of us here going out to Portland.
Blackfoot Communications is committed to supporting Bozeman businesses. From intelligent network solutions like SD-WAN to fast and reliable fiber-based services, Blackfoot delivers innovative ways for your business to succeed. Blackfoot Communications. Connect to more.